Remember from the Kindle Coda vignette how it was one of those crazy stories about who was responsible for the inspiration for the Kindle, and it turned out it was Tesla founder Martin Eberhard.
Crazy. He had invented the first e-reader that wasn't quite viable yet and tried to sell it to Amazon and tried to get investment from Amazon. And Amazon said, no, we'll wait till the world shifts a little bit, different technology. It's actually something we can own outright rather than funding and potentially having competitors use too. And of course, that would be a few years later and Amazon would create the Kindle internally.
So there is a similar sort of figure involved in inspiring the vision for AWS, and that is Tim O'Reilly. And for anybody of a certain age, you certainly remember the O'Reilly programming books, the O'Reilly conferences, and in particular for me, I mean, they were the organization, and Tim, as the leader of the organization, championed the whole idea of Web 2.0.
For sure. I mean, I remember first reading, I think, the PHP book that they put out. And then when Web 2.0, this sort of idea of, I can consume on the web, but also I can post on the web. And that sort of led to social media. And one of the key enabling technologies and all that is Ajax. And I remember reading the O'Reilly Ajax book of, wow, I can use, asynchronous JavaScript and XML to make dynamic web pages without needing to refresh. That was truly magical at the time.
And there were a few core tenets that they sort of defined as what Web 2.0 meant. Part of it was in opposition to Web 1.0, which they considered static. And so Web 2.0 was dynamic, like you're saying, but that wasn't all of it. Another huge part of what they meant by Web 2.0 was what they called participatory culture and interoperability. And they meant that both users on websites could interact with the website. So you had Flickr, you would upload your photos and you would interact and change the website. Or Google Maps, of course, was such a canonical Web 2.0 project. But even more than users interoperating and interacting with Web 2.0 sites was other developers. Remember mashups, Ben?
Like mashing up APIs?
Yes. So Web 2.0 mashups were such all the rage, and Google Maps was like a core part of this. People would take the Google Maps API and build all sorts of other websites using Google Maps data and content underneath it. Or, Flickr had an API. It was APIs. It was interoperability. It was anybody can access. It's democratizing what we've built.
Totally. It's so funny to hear all the crypto people today talk about composability. I feel like the old man yelling from tree or get off my lawn person, but it is very clear that people did not experience the 2006 to 2010 era of the exact same promise. But instead of smart contracts or composability on blockchains, people were saying it's a RESTful API. It has CRUD operations to create or read or update or delete things on a service. So if you're authenticated, then you don't need to necessarily use a web UI. You can just use the API and you can upload a photo programmatically, or you can fetch your entire list of tweets programmatically. It was like all the web, instead of being in these siloed applications, was magically free for data to sort of move about in a utopian way without anybody's capitalist intentions getting in the way and siloing the data all to themselves.
So in the early days of all this, I think it was early 2002, Tim O'Reilly flies up to Seattle and meets with Jeff Bezos. And the reason he wants to come see Jeff, they've had a sort of checkered history in the past. O'Reilly has not always been the biggest fan of Amazon. He's a book publisher, obviously, so he has some feelings. But he wants to make the pitch to Jeff that Amazon should embrace Web 2.0 and transform Amazon.com into a participatory website.
Being a Web 2.0 company means that you can do business with other companies without needing like a BD agreement in place. You don't actually need a partnership agreement. You basically can just publish your API. You can say, pay as you go, and here's how you pay, and here's how you get an account, and we can shut down your account if we need. But you can get API access to do business with us programmatically through this application programming interface. And it's great. Maybe no one or two companies will ever even need to talk to each other, which means you can do business with thousands of companies out there, not just a few that your BD people cherry pick.
Yes. And Jeff totally gets it. He gets this in so many ways. Amazon.com has this obvious business use case for APIs and allowing other developers and other websites to access data and content from Amazon.com, which is they have a giant affiliate program that's called the Amazon Associates Program.
And they've got a catalog of every uniquely identifiable product in the world, certainly in the media space, but at this time growing into many other categories too. So wouldn't it be nice to access that authoritative catalog to fetch an image and display that image on my website if I'm trying to tell people, hey, go buy this CD.
Display the CD right there and then share the revenue with Amazon.
It's good for both of us if I can do that.
So after this meeting, Jeff does two things. One, he completely embraces this idea. Tim and O'Reilly, he invites Tim up regularly to Seattle, has him speak at all hands within the company, evangelize this idea of Web 2.0 and APIs within Amazon. Two, he starts a new team within Amazon to do just what Tim is suggesting. They build APIs that let any website developer plug into the Amazon.com product catalog, do everything you just said, Ben. And the stated goal and mission of this team is to make Amazon.com APIs available to developers and, quote, let them surprise us with what they build. That same year, this is Amazon, they move fast. They hold a conference for developers in 2002. A total of 8 people attend the conference. They announced to the world the launch of this new division within Amazon that is called Amazon Web Services.
So to your point here, this is not an important thing in the world yet. Amazon having a developer conference with 8 people there. When you look at reInvent now, and I think it has 100,000 people who watch the keynote. Very different world.
Yes, very different world and very different product. This is called Amazon Web Services, but it is not cloud-based IT infrastructure. It's other developers using the Amazon.com product catalog. And indeed, Amazon Web Services lives within the Amazon Associates program. And that is run by a guy named Colin Breyer, which is very, very fun because Colin goes on to do many things, including recently co-authoring the book Working Backwards, which is a great book we used for a source in both this episode and the previous episode on Amazon.com. But for now, in 2002, Colin technically becomes the first head of AWS.
Wow. And it was just within Amazon Associates at this point, because the whole point in this origin story, the scope of the ambition of AWS was to make available assets of Amazon.com to our affiliates, to Amazon Associates, who want to basically fetch images and items from the catalog and have that information passed along when someone purchases something to share some revenue. That was the scope of the ambition based on where it lived in the organization.
Now, all of that is absolutely true. There is no element of myth or falsehood to anything in this second origin story here. And now we'll sort of transition from number 2 to number 3 together. But what I think is so important about number 2, even though it leads to AWS, that is the creation of AWS, but not the AWS we know and love. But it's this idea of Web 2.0 and APIs that really starts to take hold, at least in Jeff Bezos's mind.
And we have not once in this story said the phrase cloud computing or the cloud. We've said web services. And I think people today have heard AWS so many times that they sort of forget that it's a little bit of a misnomer. It's still called Amazon Web Services, but the vast majority of what is happening when customers are paying the ludicrous amount of revenue to Amazon to access AWS is not web services. It is not these RESTful API endpoints that you use to fetch and post information.
Who got the truth? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Sit me down, say it straight. Another story on the way. Who got the truth? Who got the truth now?